Hello, my name is Ariel, like the mermaid, and I'm here with my friend Nikki, and she has written two books. One of them is titled Redefining Positive: How to Use Validation to Be a Positive Force in People's Lives by Nicole Raheja, and All About You, a Personality Quiz Book. So tell me, Nikki, what was the main inspiration? Your first book was Redefining Positive. What was the main inspiration behind this book?
So I had been through a lot of invalidating experiences where, I was in situations that were really not okay for me. And when I spoke out about those issues, people kept telling me, oh, it's not that bad, and trying to push me to look on the positive side as opposed to actually fixing the problems and getting out of those situations. And I realized that I think if we had learned, like if as a society we had all learned about validation when we were younger, the same way you learn about like how to respect people or how to be nice to people, if we had just all learned that, I don't think my story would have happened. I think that people in my life would have recognized, oh, if you are saying that that's bad, then it is that bad. And I wanted to do something about that to make sure that other people wouldn't have the same experience as me. Other people would, next time that they're in a situation that's bad for them, other people would know how to validate their feelings because they've read my book, and that'll be something that's taught.
Yeah, that's great. I've started reading Redefining Positive. It's a great read. It's what's great is that you use like specific examples, and you don't shy away from various different situations like that relate to just simple like little kind of like the, I guess, like what some people would call microaggressions, those little validations that add up and really compound to these bigger invalidations that as a society we unfortunately all too often participate in. But you also don't shy away from topics like abuse, including emotional abuse, and family trauma, which, unfortunately, I think that both of us have seen people in our lives who have struggled with all sorts of mental health issues and issues of trauma. And I think what's great about this book is a lot of the kind of positive rhetoric, like the idea, positive psychology isn't bad. It can be very good to have a positive outlook, but more and more people have been talking about the concept of toxic positivity, where it's like it's a false positivity. It's not true positivity because it's not an inclusive positivity. It's not. It's a positivity based on invalidating and victim blaming the problems,
Yeah.
that the legitimate problems that people have.
Yeah.
Would you like to like elaborate on
Yeah,
that?
so I would say a lot of the book is trying to combat the toxic positivity. The reason that it's called Redefining Positive is that a lot of times when we think about being positive, we think about smiling and being
Mm-hmm.
happy and kind of pushing that on others. And I think that being a positive force in someone's life,
Mm-hmm.
that can mean a lot of different things. That can mean that you validate somebody's experience. If they're like really sad, that you validate that they're sad. If they're angry, you validate that. If they're, feeling scared, and you just validate however they feel. And it can mean doing what that person might need. Like if that person maybe needs a shoulder to cry on, you could be there for them like that. Or if they need help, say, getting out of an abusive relationship, helping with that, in a safe way, as opposed to saying, oh, that's not actually that bad. Toxic positivity would be kind of telling the person that what they're going through isn't that bad, and let's think about the positive aspects of it instead. Whereas being a positive force in someone's life can mean meeting them on their level, whatever they need. And it also means recognizing that everyone's needs are different. Like there could be things that would like really really upset me that might not upset you, and there could be
Yeah.
things that would really upset you that might not upset me, and it's recognizing that and being okay with it, as opposed to saying I'm happy with this, so therefore you have to be happy with this also.
Exactly. Oh yeah, no, that's out of what I've read of the book so far and what you've explained to me about the concept behind it. I think you do a great job of elaborating on that. And what's great is you provide an answer to toxic positivity. While I think a lot of people have correctly criticized it, I haven't heard a lot of like solutions that actually reframe positivity as a good thing. Like it's good to be a positive force in people's lives. It's good to validate others, but that doesn't mean being happy 24/7.
Right, right. And it's not even, it doesn't even have to do with like how you are. You know, you could be going through a difficult time. You don't have to be that kind of like bubbly, happy
No.
kind of person in order to be there for somebody else who needs you.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to think what I was there was like a I think like another thing you talk about is very much this book talks about consent, and it addresses issues of consent. Now, I think as a society in recent years in particular, just like I guess in the past decade, it's probably been, we've increasingly discussed the issue of consent in the context of sexual relationships, and
Yeah.
even in romantic relationships. But consent is an issue in all sorts of, in any kind of relationship, whether it's a professional relationship, whether it's a teacher-student relationship, whether it's a parent-child relationship. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so consent is something that I feel like we should be talking about in all aspects of our lives, not just in the context of sexual assault, even though, you know, that might be one of the more serious issues. But consent is important in pretty much everything, and our culture in a lot of ways expects people to be okay with a certain amount of pressure, you know, pushing someone to say go to a party if they don't want to, or try your potato salad if they don't want to,
Yeah.
things like that. And I think part of it goes back to the way that we learn about peer pressure, because you know, when I was a kid and I very first learned about peer pressure, and I feel like this is true of a lot of us, is when I first learned about peer pressure, it was in the context of people pushing you to do something that was wrong. Like maybe someone's like pressuring you to steal something from another kid. And while that's good to talk about, you're really mixing two issues together, because stealing from another kid is wrong anyway. It's really not about the pressure. And as we got older, as we learned about peer pressure in the context of sex, drugs, alcohol, smoking, things like that, again, it was more like the adults didn't want us to get pressured into doing things that they didn't want us to do anyway. They would not have been happy if we had chosen to do any of those things on our own. We never learned about peer pressure just by itself without the context of someone pushing you to do something bad. And I feel like, you know, I've been in many situations where I was being pressured to do things that I didn't want to do after I'd said no many times. Things like joining groups, joining clubs, going to events, doing things that were not bad things. You know, cut your hair, join a gym, go on this diet, things like that. And I think as a society, we've kind of normalized that it's okay to do that. And in my book, I address that is important as well, to make sure that we're not pressuring people to do things that they don't want to do. And I have a section where I say, can you spot the examples that are positive pressure and negative pressure? And what I define as positive pressure, it's not pressure to do something that you think is positive. It's when you're giving someone a push to do something that they already wanted to do. Like if somebody's like, oh, you know, I really, really want to try out for the track team, but oh, I'm not sure I'll make it. And you say to your friend, hey, you should go for it. That would be an example of like a positive push, because your friend has expressed an interest already. But other situations where somebody hasn't expressed an interest, you know, if I just say like, oh, you should dye your hair like yellow when maybe you don't want to, you know, that those are the kind of negative pressures, you know, if somebody's already said no to it. And something that's really unique about this book is that the examples I give about pressure, none of them involve pushing someone to do something that would be morally wrong or something that other people would perceive as bad. Every example in there that's like, here's what not to do, it all involves pushing people to do things that are perfectly fine things to do. So that way you can really isolate that issue of peer pressure, and you can really look at a situation and say, I'm not looking at whether this action is good or bad. I'm looking at, does the person did they express an interest in this, you know?
Yeah, I think like a great example I read was the example of a friend who says like, "Hey, like let's go get burgers." And
Oh yeah.
and then the friend has a big reaction. They're like, "What?" Like, like I can't believe you would say that. Like and freaks out. Now,
Yeah.
to an outside observer, it's like, "What? He just asked for like burger. What's a big deal about a burger?"
Yeah.
But like then you provide the context, which is like this is a pattern of behavior where this person has asserted a boundary. And I relate to this. I was like I'm sort of like a pescatarian now, but like I was a vegetarian throughout most of my time in college. And I usually didn't get pressure to eat meat, but like sometimes people would tease me about being a vegetarian. And I think it was
Yeah.
because they felt insecure about their own choice to eat meat. And the truth was, I never told them that they should be vegetarian. I never condemned their choice to be a meat eater. I just had a personal choice where I felt more comfortable being a vegetarian. Um, and that definitely like spoke to me though. It's like there's the big reaction, which maybe seems like it's overblown to an outside observer, but it's a reaction to a pattern of behavior.
Yes, that's what I was trying to get across with that example, is that you know, when you're looking at someone's behavior, you don't know the history, you don't know the
Mm-hmm.
whole story. The way that it's presented at first, you don't even know that the other person is a vegetarian. You just see the two kids where one of them says, "Do you want to get a burger?" and the other one freaks out. But once you understand the context and realize this is a pattern of pressure where someone like will not leave the other person alone about it,
Mm-hmm.
then you would say that reaction is perfectly justified. I mean, some people would react even bigger than that, and it's important to think about that when you observe someone's behavior. Instead of thinking, gee, that person got upset over nothing, think, gee, maybe there's a part of this story that I don't know, that I don't know about their history or about the history of the two friends and their pattern of behavior, like you said.
Yeah, it definitely makes me think about some of my experience. Like I used to work in the psychiatric industry, and somebody like I think it was a supervisor of mine talked about the difference between like proactive behaviors and reactive behaviors. So, which can even be like violent behaviors or things like saying mean things to people. You know, you can recognize that a certain behavior is not ideal or not the like most helpful in a situation or not appropriate for a situation, especially in cases of violence. But you can also recognize that sometimes we are seeing the reaction, especially as adults. Like a lot of times there are people that just for whatever reason, whether it's a learned behavior or it's because like some people have certain tendencies or they think that it's okay to that like teasing is fine, but another person they feel very hurt by it. I
Yeah.
remember sometimes as a kid, like I could be very sensitive to even light teasing. Like I can recognize in retrospect they didn't have bad intentions, they were just like teasing me maybe, but I took it very personally because I felt personally attacked, and I sometimes would have like a big reaction that was maybe to an outside observer disproportionate. But I think this book does a great job of distinguishing between like the proactive, like either abusive or just kind of negative behavior or just disrespectful behavior, or like these boundary violations
Right.
uh, that can add up. Like it may seem small, and sometimes the breaking point is like something that's like asking somebody for a burger. That like to an outside
Yeah.
observer that seems like totally appropriate. If somebody asked me, do I want a burger, I'd be like, well, I don't eat meat, but I'll have a vegetarian burger.
Right.
But but it clearly this in this example, it's a pattern of behavior. Another thing I really And I've heard a lot of other people kind of echo this sentiment, the idea of asking before giving advice, as opposed to, I think that a lot of people, sometimes people don't necessarily know what a person wants when they're talking about a problem in their life. Sometimes they want an answer. Maybe sometimes they do want feedback. But sometimes they just want you to listen when they're to what they're going through. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I think when somebody has a problem, it is good to ask them, like, are you looking for advice? Do you want my advice or my help on this? Or, are you just looking to vent? Or are you just looking for emotional support? Because sometimes a person might just be looking to vent and they're not looking for advice. And if the person says they are looking for advice, the metaphor I like to use with it is like, if somebody came up to you on the street and said, "Help, I'm really lost. Could you please give me some directions?" You would say to that person, "Okay, where are you trying to go?" Because you can't give them directions without knowing where they're trying to go.
Yes.
And I feel like in general, we don't always tend to do that. Like in life, sometimes we tend to direct people where we think they should go or where we think the best path is. So if somebody is looking for your advice, you want to make sure that you understand where is it that person is trying to go, what are their goals, what is the end result that they want, and make sure that you're focusing on that.
Yeah, I've noticed on more than one occasion with like more than one person on social media, kind of like from a distance, seeing certain interactions. I've noticed that this is a common theme that often comes up. It's like somebody is venting about a problem. Maybe they want advice, maybe they don't. But sometimes even I think people can, in overstepping with connecting to a person's experience, like it is an understandable reaction to be like, oh, this person's talking about this issue they have that's similar to my issue. The problem is, like, sometimes people, even though they don't think they're giving advice, by talking about their own experience and by saying, oh, when I was in this like situation like yours, I did this. While that might not, like, that technically has like a linguistic way of, kind of not technically being advice, you're technically just saying your own experience. Definitely reminds me of when I'd be like in group therapy, like they, like the finding the way around using eye language, or using eye language to basically just give advice. But I've seen sometimes like big reactions from the person who was just venting. And I think some people get really defensive. They're like, oh, hey, whoa, I was just talking about my own experience. But I think what they fail to recognize, especially when a person has repeatedly asserted the boundary, hey, when I'm venting, I'm not looking for advice. Even not being careful in that way, where you're just talking about, where one's like talking about their own experience, and comparing another person's experience to theirs, it can come off as very invalidating.
Yeah, it definitely can, and especially if your experience might be completely different than theirs. I've seen that a lot of times where, sometimes you could be in the same situation and react completely differently, and sometimes it could come off as, oh, well, when I had that problem, I didn't need all that time off for it. I was better and functioning after this amount of time, or that sort of thing. So you want to make sure that you're not doing that like if somebody's venting, you just listen to them. And if you are having a back and forth conversation where you're talking about it, you don't want to share your experience in a way that makes it sound like they have to relate to you. Like if it's a type of thing where you think there is a solution to their problem and they're looking for a solution and you might have it, you could ask them, like, would you like help with this? But you don't want to talk about your experience in a way that makes it sound like you should be okay with this because I was okay with it. Yes. Or you should like be over this because I was over it. Things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can also, often inadvertently, but it can very much minimize a person's problem. It can treat it like even if the person is saying like is trying to like express empathy or express like express compassion and basically saying like, oh, I was in this similar situation, I recognize that it's frustrating, by talking about how you personally overcame it, that can make it seem like you are it can be an act of invalidation, because you are there's the implication that, oh, you will be able to get over this situation, but you don't really know all the specifics in a person's situation.
Yeah, like you don't know that. And the thing is, everything isn't something that is something that you're going to overcome. Sometimes you need to get out of a situation. Like, say, for example, say you were in college and somebody was like having a really bad time, like they were really homesick. It could be something where they don't want to push through. Maybe the best solution for them is to go home, is to maybe transfer someplace closer to home. Now, let's say if somebody else says, oh, well, I'm much farther away. Like I live much farther away and I haven't been home in like much longer than you have. And, I get used to it and stuff like that. I mean, that's something that I got a lot. Like I got a lot of invalidation because, I was nowhere near like one of the farthest from home people in my college. And even though they might have been trying to sympathize or empathize or something, it's very invalidating because they're saying like, oh, like it became okay for me. Like I got over it. I got through it. And that's not how it is. Like somebody could be like really far away and be like, okay, I'll push through this. And someone else could be like an hour away and say, no, this is too much for me.
Yeah, no, that is a great example. I think this is this is a great read for anybody, because we all exist in a culture where, unfortunately, it's a phenomenon that sometimes I call cultural gaslighting, where there's some of us who, for whatever reason, society or our communities have failed to accommodate us, whether it was in our childhood, when we went to college, or in our work life. A lot of times we are taught to victim blame those who cannot succeed in our culture. But the fact is, some people, our culture is not built for everybody.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to say about that?
Well, it's definitely not built for everybody, and I think sometimes we victim blame to take the blame off of us because, if you love the company you work for, or you love your school, or you love a community, and somebody says, hey, like I'm being mistreated, there are all these problems, maybe that makes you feel uncomfortable. Maybe you feel, and some of the solution to this is if you could have the self-awareness, if you say you love your school or your company, if you're able to recognize why you love it, if you're able to say, these are the reasons why this works very well for me personally, then if somebody else says, this is not working for me, it doesn't affect your worldview, because your view was, this works very well for me because I have these characteristics that line up well with it, and it's perfectly fine for somebody else to not be a good fit in that same situation. But if you don't have that self-awareness of why this is a good fit for you, and you just have this belief, this company is awesome, this school is awesome, this community is awesome, and someone else says, no, it's not, and you feel like that's threatening your worldview, and you feel uncomfortable, you get that kind of cognitive dissonance, like, how can I be so happy when this person's miserable? The easiest way to get rid of that uncomfortable guilt feeling is like, oh, well, there must be something wrong with you. Like that's how you get rid of your own guilt. And if you can just have that self-awareness all along, instead of seeing it as, this community is objectively awesome, but like this is a great fit for me individually, then you can make room to say, yes, I can have my happy feelings about this community while validating the fact that it's not going to be right for everybody, and while critically examining it that, hey, maybe there's some things our community should be doing to be more accommodating to this person.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I remember, this is like a random example that comes to mind, related to high school. There were, I overall, like, I'm grateful for the education I had. I had a lot of great teachers, but who really cared about teaching us. However, what I really disliked about my high school experience was that it seemed to be all focused on college as the ultimate goal, and that's not everybody's goal. And even if it was, like, I mean, I kind of assumed I was going to go to college. That was kind of it, it seemed like maybe something that might be good for me. I didn't want to spend all of my high school. I wanted to be able to just learn because I enjoyed learning. Like, I loved English class because I loved reading books. I loved, like, learning stories, and I wanted to be a storyteller myself. I loved history, learning about different events. But I think that because everything was framed in terms of college, it really ruined, it kind of tainted that learning experience, because I wasn't allowed to just learn for the sake of learning. I had to perform for this goal that was imposed upon me. And one of the, like, things I remember in particular, and this is like it's kind of a funny thing, because I was like, I made high honors my first quarter. I don't think I ever made it like my first quarter of freshman year. It was so funny. Like, I think in my first quarter of like geometry, like honors geometry I was in, I got like an A+, and then like the final exam got an F. But let me just turn down the gain. I might be spiking a little bit. But the thing was, I learned that I got this high honors thing not because I checked like the things. Somebody just came up to me, like a classmate just came up to me and was like, "Hey, you made high honors." I'm like, "What? How do you know that?" And the thing was, my high school, not only they publicly like listed the honor roll, so like, if you were a student who made high honors or just regular honors or whatever, I think they even included honorable mention maybe, but they just list your name on a list in the hall. Now, like, they would assume like, hey, you made high honors. What's the complaint? Like, I mean, you succeeded. That's a positive thing. But the thing was, I felt very invalidated by that, because I didn't consent to everybody knowing that I like made high honors. Like, I didn't consent to having like that expectation of like, oh, you're going to be like the great student like on me. And I think as a result, I mean, it probably, if anything, made me feel less motivated to succeed. Also, like, they like would post it in the town newspaper, which I thought was like completely I guess that's common practice in a lot of towns.
Yeah,
but
they
like,
did it with us too.
Yeah, I always hated that. Anyways, that's totally a tangent. But
no, I didn't really like that very much either. I mean, I wasn't that into like the academic part of school, but I really loved the activities I did, and I really hated when at a certain point it was like activities were all about what was going to look good on your resume. There were people joining clubs that I was in because I was legitimately interested in them, just so that they could put it on their resume. And I just hated that feel to it. I mean, I stuck with doing what really mattered to me, but it was just, there was so much focus on that. And then there was a lot of focus on presenting yourself the way a college would want you to be. And, I mean, not that I didn't lie about any individual things I did, but I really presented myself in a way that was like, not authentic to me. And you have to think to yourself, well, if I'm presenting myself in this way that isn't really how I feel inside, how would I fit in if I got accepted? If you're just giving them what they want, but it's not like real to you, that doesn't seem like you're going to end up where you would be happy.
Yeah. No, and another thing it made me think of was that, like, what you were just talking about made me think of is like my college essay. Which, like, I'm sure I would read today and I'd stand by what I said. It was all true. But I was like pressured, like, basically I was like, I don't know what to write about. And then like somebody in my life told me like, oh, well, you did this thing where you went to, like, somebody asked me when I was a junior in high school, like, hey, do you want to come like talk to like the middle schoolers about your experience of being queer? So I did do that. I talked about my experience like as a bisexual. I wasn't out as trans at the time. I knew I was trans. I just, wasn't open about it. But like I really hated the fact that I felt the need. That was like I knew like, okay, this is the college essay that's gonna get me in, but it felt like I was like cheapening the thing I had done. Like I was like,
Yeah.
yes, this was like it's not a thing I'm ashamed of. I'm happy that I did this thing that hopefully helped some kids, like, you know, feel hopefully be more accepting of their LGBTQ plus peers, or to maybe even consider their own gender, or their own like sexual orientation, and hopefully like have more self-acceptance and acceptance of others. uh but I didn't want to, like, I didn't like the idea of just presenting, like, selling myself as a person by using this thing. It seemed like it really cheapened the
Yeah.
impact of the, at least to me, that was, and I think a
Yeah.
lot of other people, they don't think twice, or maybe they'd even just do something like that because, like, they speak in that kind of a thing, just like thinking about college applications, being like, oh yeah. But for me, like, there was like I kind of had a fixation on authenticity, and a fixation on kind of like sincerity that I think some other people don't have, and that made it hard for me.
Yeah, I felt the same way, and I would feel the same way about things like that, because I feel like, I mean, the reason you do that is for the kids who are going to be impacted by it.
Exactly.
And I
Yeah.
feel like, the things that I did, like the things I was involved in, I did them at the time because I cared about them. And
Hmm.
it's like, it feels weird when you're putting it on the application knowing that this is what's going to get you in, when it's like, this is just what I wanted to do. And it feels like it lessens the importance of why you were doing it in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, I think also like the thing that I felt is especially like offended by, frankly, was that the same person, I'm not going to name the person, but like the same person in my life who had like expressed like, hey, I don't think you should like talk to like the, like people will like, say bad things about you, or like it'll be like, basically like reflecting a lot of kind of like fears related to like homophobia, or like fears that I would be mistreated as a result of being honest about my experience. Um, but then like when it came time for this same person, when it came time for college essays, they were like, oh well, this thing would be a great thing to talk about, you could sell like that'll like be appealing to colleges. And I was like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Wait a second. You didn't want me to do this thing, and now you're willing to use it, just sell me as a product to a college.
Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah. No, I saw a lot of that as well,
uh,
just back and forth about what they wanted. And I feel like we went our whole lives with adults telling us, like, oh, don't fit into don't change yourself to fit in with the
mm.
popular kids, be yourself. But as soon as the popular kids are the college admissions people, then you change completely who you are to get in with them. And to me, it's the same principle. I can remember when we talked about peer pressure as kids, and it was like, oh, what if in order to be in someone's club you had to, I don't know, like throw eggs at your neighbor or something silly like that. And we would always have a discussion of like, well, what kind of club is this? Like, regardless of whether you should do that to get in, like, what kind of club is this? And not that it was anything bad like that, but it's like, if you have to present yourself as someone you're not to get, like, what kind of school is this? Like, are you going to belong there? And I feel like we're all taught to do that. Schools, job interviews, just everything. And it's like, you're not going to be happy or fit in, even just with a community, with friends and stuff. Like how are you going to belong if you have to present yourself as something you're not?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And something, I think I started saying, but again, I would recommend this book to, I admittedly have only read parts of it, but I look forward to reading the rest of it.
Thanks.
I give it a thorough reading. But I think this is, I think especially for people in the field of like psychiatry and mental health, based on my own experiences as both like a mental health patient and as a mental health worker. I definitely think there is a lot of, I think people aren't even conscious about all of the invalidation that occurs on a systemic level, whereas there's invalidation of people's experiences, like the people who are patients, but also invalidation of like the workers' experiences. Like you know, this is a hard job, you know, that and I just would like to ask you about so you've had do you mind talking about your own experiences in therapy or
so my experiences in therapy, it it's been helpful for me. I've I've had good experiences and bad experiences. Like some of my earliest experiences with therapy, like back at college, were completely invalidating and kind of all about making me just like fit in and be quiet. And it was more about not disturbing other people. When I began, I've done like some CBT, some DBT, which neither one of them was really a good fit for me, but I feel like there were individual skills that I got out of them that helped me to get where I want to be. In general, though, I feel like you have to like fight for what you actually want out of therapy, because I felt like, I'm glad that like my CBT therapist helped me in a lot of ways, but in the long run, it wasn't a good fit because it wasn't enough acknowledging what I had been through. And it was a lot more, in some ways it felt like it was telling me to go back and make the same mistakes I already had, because I had a very happy life before my traumatic experience in college, and when I got there I started recognizing things that I was like, oh, I'm not really comfortable about this or that, and I was kind of told like, oh, that's all in your head, like this is you, and this is like kind of, and what's hard is, getting out of that, having PTSD, I would go into the world and see perfectly innocent situations as being like my college. And that's why it was really hard for me to like be happy and make friends and do all these things. And then when I was doing like CBT, DBT, a lot of times I was being told that in order to sort of get used to the fact that, okay, you're not at your school anymore, like you're in the regular world, these things aren't happening, I was being told to like do the same things that got me in the mess in the first place, doubt what I was thinking. And it's hard because to some extent I did have to look at it and say, okay, is this happening now or is this the past thing? But that doubt that they were telling me to do in therapy is what got me there in the first place, telling me to not trust my instincts. And, in recent years, I've had some, friendship breakups, some things that have happened where when I look at it now, it's like, a part of me knew that something was wrong, but I kept telling myself, I kept using CBT on myself and some DBT skills, checking the facts, saying, oh, this is just, you're just having a trauma response. You're just feeling like something's wrong because of the past things when they really were happening. So but I also needed some of that to help with the things, because there were plenty of times where the current situation was innocent and I was having a flashback. Currently, the best thing for me has been EMDR. That really got me out of the trauma mode. And the other thing is, there's an event that I go to. I'm not going to say the name of it because it might reveal location, but it involves sort of like speed friending, talking to a lot of different people and making friends. Yeah. And that has worked as sort of an informal exposure therapy for me. And so because every interaction sort of reinforces the fact that like I am likable and stuff. And that's something I would definitely recommend, like EMDR for trauma. And if you can find a type of speed friending event, I don't want to say the name of this one because of location. And my current therapist, I feel like the most important thing is that she's able to listen to me and let me direct what I actually want. Like you need to find someone who respects where you want to be. And she was able to recognize when like DBT wasn't working for me, and we switched to like just sort of regular therapy, and she was able to actually recognize when I had been re-traumatized by DBT, and she's like, okay, let's process through what we've done in session. And she was able to handle that, without being defensive about, don't you dare say I traumatized you. She's like, yeah, I think I did re-traumatize you. Let's work through that. And, someone who respects your needs in that way. So,
I think that's like can be a very important part of the role of whether it's a therapist, a parent, a teacher, is recognizing the role of repair. And it seems like your therapist was willing to do the repair work when she recognized that she caused harm with her therapy, even if she didn't intend to. And that's I definitely also really echo your sentiments that you've expressed about both CBT and DBT. I did find them very, like, they were life-changing when I first was exposed to CBT and DBT. However, I've noticed that as I have returned to DBT and returned to CBT after several times, it seems like there's something missing here in how this is being taught, at least. I think one of the most useful things about DBT is the dialectic, which for some reason I think most DBT therapists focus on the behavioral part. They forget the dialectic. The dialectic is the really important part, especially when it comes to trauma, because you can recognize, the whole point is recognizing two truths at once that may seem to contradict each other. So like your therapist, she had to recognize two truths at once, like that she was trying to do her best, presumably, and that she wanted the best for you when she was doing this therapy, but she also could recognize, like, this is bad and I'm causing harm, I'm re-traumatizing my patient, I need to stop, and we need to do repair work right away. So I'm happy that therapist was able to recognize that and was able to do that repair work.
Yeah, I'm glad. And the dialectic, I feel like, is actually, it's an important part of validation. There's actually a part in there where I don't think I use the word dialectic, but I give an example about knowing that two things can be true at the same time and how that can help. I think it was the section that's about your own personal needs. I gave this example that, like if a friend of yours, let's say you had a friend who lived very far away, like other side of the country, and they post on social media, hey, I'm stuck somewhere, can someone give me a ride home? Now, obviously, you can't physically go all the way across the country and give them a ride home, but you would still validate the fact that they need one. You wouldn't say, like, oh, you don't need a ride home. But the thing is, it's important to be able to hold those things at the same time, because let's say a friend calls you up and they're like, I really need help. Like, I'm in a crisis. I need someone to come over right now. And you just can't do that. For whatever reason, you're not able to do that. Sometimes if you're not able to hold both of those truths at once, like, okay, it's possible for my friend to need me and it's possible for me to not be able to go, and those things are valid at the same time, that's when we can invalidate people, because in order to deal with that guilt we feel, we might be thinking, well, gee, if my friend really needs me right now, then I should be going to them, and I feel guilty. So a way to get rid of that guilt is to say, oh, well, you're just being dramatic. You must not really be in a crisis. You're faking it, that sort of thing. And that can be the reason why we do that. And if we can have that dialectic where we say, yes, this is completely valid. Like, one of my best friends will sometimes say to me, like, it is valid that you need this, but, like, I'm busy right now. And that makes me feel a lot better, as opposed to if you try to invalidate what the other person's saying.
Yeah. No, I think that's excellent advice that I think more people should hear. Because, I mean, it's hard when you're in that situation. Like, I mean, I think a lot of us have, especially if we are part of communities where we know a lot of people who have difficult mental health needs. And, like, I know sometimes I'm the kind of person who I'll see somebody on social media who, I mean, I think usually I direct the guilt at myself as opposed to directing it outward, typically, but that's not healthy in its own way. Like, I recognize, like, there have been times where I've seen somebody's post on social media, like, expressing that they're struggling with their mental health or they're in a crisis or whatever, and I feel like, oh, I want to help this person, but I know, like, I can't right now because I just do not have the spoons. I don't have the mental drive. I'm burnt out from, like, either work or just my own, like, emotional issues that I'm going through. And that can be hard to deal with. And I know, like, sometimes I in the past, I've really internalized that, and I've, like, beat myself up about it in a way that was totally not healthy for me, and also just in the long run, like, made me unable to be that supportive friend and made me afraid to just, like, help anybody because I was just so, like, debilitated by that guilt. But I think when one is able to acknowledge that dialectic, both recognize one's own needs, but also recognize that the needs of others are valid, even if they contradict your needs. That that is a solution that can really help people.
Yeah.
Compartmentalize these issues.
Yeah.
So is there anything else you'd like to say about the book Redefining Positive?
I don't know. I think we've pretty much covered a lot of it.
Great. So again, this is the cover. Let me get a nice close shot. There we go. So Redefining Positive, how to use validation to be a positive force in people's lives. This is a great read. I definitely recommend it.
Thank you.
So let's move on to your next book, All About You, a personality quiz book. So my understanding is that this is a response to some of the personality quizzes that you saw or that you took. Would you like to describe those experiences?
Oh, sure. So I've always really, really loved quiz books. I think I got my first quiz book when I was 11. It was an American Girl quiz book, and I just fell so much in love with them, and I've kind of always known that I want to write my own. And one thing I found in a lot of the quiz books that I took growing up is that a lot of them would kind of tell you how you were supposed to be. Like they would, if you answered mostly A's, they would tell you, oh, you should really try to be more like someone who answers mostly B's. They try to push you into being something you're not. And I wanted to write a quiz book that was like that, like fun, like something you could do with your friends and stuff, but that validated everybody's, however you came out was just as good as any of the other choices. Like everybody's answers were valid. And for one example to explain how I did it is the first quiz in that book, which is about, are you a planner or are you more spontaneous? So if you come out mostly A's, you're a planner, mostly B's is in the middle, and mostly C's is spontaneous. Now, the type of quiz books I grew up with, they would have told the person who answered mostly A's, you should really learn how to be more spontaneous. And they would have told the person who answered mostly C's, you should learn to be a better planner. I do the opposite. What I say to the person who answers mostly A's is I give them advice on how to be an even better planner. I give them advice on things like checking the weather before an event that is outdoors, or calling a venue to make sure they'll be open, taking these steps. And the reason why I advise them on that is because somebody who answered mostly A's on that quiz cares a lot about things going exactly according to plan. So I'm giving them advice on how to reduce the risk of the plans changing, because that's their personality. Whereas someone who answered mostly C's, they don't need that kind of advice because they don't care that much if the plans change. For someone who answered mostly C's, I advise them on how to sort of get out of that planning role, how to say things like, okay, if we're going to the beach, everybody bring your own picnic lunch. Everybody's responsible for your own ride. Things like that, so that you don't have to be in the role of a planner, since you don't really like that. And throughout the book, that's what I try to do. I try to give people advice on how to navigate the world as you are and get your personal needs met, as opposed to try not to be like the way you are.
Yeah. So I think you have, I believe you mentioned when you were, I've heard in the past, when you were talking about this book, you talked about the I think it was the Myers-Briggs personality quiz. Would you care to share your thoughts and kind of how this compares to the Myers-Briggs or other similar kind of more psychological based?
Yeah. So I think what I was trying to do, so this isn't really an official personality quiz book like the Myers-Briggs. This is more for fun, but something I liked about the Myers-Briggs is that it looks at qualities on a spectrum. Like when I took the Big Five test, it kind of made me feel like I was supposed to come out a certain way. So I'm an introvert, for example, and on the Myers-Briggs, on the Big Five test, that measures extroversion. It's how much extroversion do you have, and it defines being an introverted as having a lack of extroversion, as opposed to it being its own quality. Whereas, so it would tell you you have out of 100 you're 40% extroverted, and it's worded in a way you're supposed to try to get 100.
Yeah.
On Myers-Briggs, it's a spectrum. It's you have like extroversion on one side, introversion on the other side, and you would say come out as 40% extroverted and 60% introverted, but you still have 100% because it's a spectrum. And that's what I'm trying to do with these quizzes, where I don't, I don't try to quantify anything as like with that first quiz, I'm not trying to say how much spontaneousness do you have, or how many, like how good are your planning skills, like on this absolute scale, like you're trying to get high. It's more like you have 100%. It's just a question of, are you like more this or more that?
Yeah, no, I definitely, it was always interesting when like, whenever I've taken I think some people, think that, I think now, like, my answers on the Myers-Briggs has become a little bit more consistent, but, like, there definitely have been wildly, like, various things. I mean, I think one thing is, like, I think some people, strangely, like, even though it's not, like, the Myers-Briggs clearly, like, treats it as a spectrum, like, with the introvert and the extrovert. I think some people, like, treat it like it's some kind of, like, a binary, which is bizarre, because it's like, I know, like, I don't fit in either category. I like, sometimes I typically now, like, kind of, I definitely tend to score more extroverted as opposed to introverted, but, I also know that, like, I do value alone time, and I need a lot of alone time, in addition to, like, social validation, and also, like, if I was to be characterized by an extrovert stereotype, it would mean, like, big parties or big social gatherings, which sometimes I can enjoy, but a lot of times I find very socially overstimulating. Like, I struggle to, like, I feel a lot of social anxiety in those big social situations, and I tend to kind of appear more introverted sometimes in those settings.
Yeah, no, it's kind of the same. I have the opposite thing where people read me as an extrovert just because I'm very social. Because it's really about like your energy. It's about like being an introvert means you're spending energy when you're being social, and being extrovert means you're getting energy. So, I am very social, and I like to go to parties and have fun and stuff like that. It's just that that's an example of spending energy, where then I would need to go and like rest afterwards. And I recently quit my office job, and I'm completely work from home now, and I come off to a lot of people as an extrovert because now I have all the time I need to relax. So when I'm being social, it's like all my energy's going into that.
Oh, wow.
So but it's a spectrum, and I think one of the nice things about that book, when you take quizzes online, a lot of times they'll just tell you this is your results, and on this one you can look at all your answers. Like if there are 10 questions, you can see, oh, I answered 5 A's and like 3 B's, and you know what I mean. You can see all of your answers and know that it is a spectrum, that you have all the different things. You don't have to just pick one if you came out with a lot of answers.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely have to do some of these quizzes and see what the results are. It's definitely. So let's. Do you mind if I like read through like
sure,
the quizzes that it has? Oh, okay, so planner or spontaneous, social or alone time. What's your desired life pace? Oh, that sounds like a great one. That's definitely I've always felt like a lot of pressure to like I internalized that. I made there's a video you can see on this channel called Torschluss panic, which basically means like gate shutting panic, where it's like the fear that as we get older, even though like I'm only 27, that's I mean, in the trans community, sometimes people treat it like it's like you're dinosaurs, which is bizarre, but but like relatively speaking, very young. So I definitely relate to that. The idea of like life pace, like there's a social expectation that you have to meet certain goals by a certain age, or else you lose your opportunities.
Yeah, that one I kind of got inspired on that one because I feel like a lot of times there's this expectation, especially like this is sort of aimed at like preteens and young adults and stuff, and there can be an expectation that as soon as like after school's over, you're running from soccer practice to piano lessons to clubbing. That's just part of life. And I feel like there isn't a lot of like there's a lot of like, oh, here's how to manage your stress, like let's do breathing exercises and stuff if you're too stressed. And it's like I think we also need to say, well, hey, is it everyone who actually wants that? Because I mean, when I was younger, I didn't like being busy. I wasn't that big into like doing a million activities when I was younger, and I wanted to validate that as well. I wanted to make sure kids can take this and find out, hey, maybe I'm not happy doing a million things. Maybe I'd rather not have a lot of activities.
How much reminiscing time? Like time reminiscing, yeah.
Yeah, so like after, like if you go through sort of a happy event, like something nice happens,
Mm.
do you feel like you're ready to just kind of jump into the next thing, or do you kind of need a longer time to savor that? And I feel like that's
Mm.
something that I wish I had known that when I was growing up, that I needed reminiscing time like that, because sometimes it was hard to explain to people why I like didn't want to do something else right away after a happy thing, even if I liked both things. So this sort of helps you figure that out, like what you need.
Yeah, no, that I think I relate to that. I mean, sometimes even with me, it's sometimes even if it's not entirely reminiscing, it's like sometimes I just need time to process. Like I think I was
Yeah.
very hard on myself when I graduated college and didn't know where to go with my life.
Yeah.
I had overall a positive experience with my college experience. Not perfect, but I did. It was like probably like some of the happiest years of my life, just because I was finally able to kind of be myself in a sense. In some senses, maybe not all in other ways.
Yeah.
But I think like after college, I was like, how do I, how do I
Yeah.
exist in the real world? I have this theater degree and
Yeah.
I would like to be a performer. I'd like to do theater, but I don't know how to go about it. I'm going to kind of do these auditions, but I don't totally, I'm struggling with these mental health issues, which just makes it like really, if you're an actor and you're not even comfortable with yourself as a
Oh
person, like
yeah.
that's gonna make it all
Yeah.
the harder to like go into an audition room and just be like, hey, I'm this person. uh so motivation or pressure.
So that's about, like, some people like having sort of motivational pressure in their life, like say having a gym buddy or a study buddy or
Hmm.
somebody to sort of hold you accountable. And other people are like, well, no, like that kind of pressure actually makes me not want to do the thing. And I
Mm.
mean, for me, like I'm someone who, like, any type of pressure will make me not interested in doing the thing anymore. And I feel like I've sort of had that pushed on me, like, oh, you should have this person who's going to hold you accountable. So this is to help people figure out like which one is better for you. Do you like that, or do you like thrive more when you don't have any pressure on you?
Yeah, no, that's I mean, I definitely relate to that. I mean, I think for me it's like it's always a delicate balance, and I think I've gotten better at like asserting boundaries, and I think that's the important thing. Is I think sometimes sometimes I do need help like motivating me. Like there are times where I feel like no direction, and it can help having somebody to support me, but like I think the problem I've had sometimes is sometimes I've been kind of pressed, like pressured into a situation, or pressured to like move on from a situation when I
Yeah.
just wasn't ready, and like I hadn't
Yeah.
processed it. And I sometimes just do need time, unfortunately, where I'm kind of a little bit aimless, kind of like maybe don't have like a specific thing I'm definitely doing, and time to explore.
Oh yeah, I need that too. Like that's,
Yeah.
yeah, that's valid.
um what's your group project role? Ooh.
So that was about if you're working on a group project, like what kind of role you play. So there is a choice for someone who just doesn't like group projects. If you're just like, I prefer to work by myself. There's someone who likes to get things done efficiently. There's someone
Mm.
who's a leader, and then there's someone who's kind of more of a people person. So this will help you kind of navigate your role.
Yeah, like I feel like I could, like, I mean, there certainly are group, like, in a sense, not like outside of like a purely academic context. I've rarely had a group project. Like, there's been a group project where I've just done all the work, and then there's like a
Oh yeah.
group project where I've done none of the work, which I always feel bad in that instance. But sometimes it just has to do with like scheduling, and sometimes one person just is like, screw it, I'm just gonna
Yeah.
I'm just gonna do all the work, it's easier. Like, and I've
Yeah.
been in that position where I've just been like, you know what, I like, it's kind of sucks, but like, screw it, I'm just gonna do it. And I remember I had a thing where like I kind of did most of the work, and the teacher could tell, and so they asked me like afterwards, like, hey, like you know you did a good job, but like it seemed like those people didn't and doing a lot of work, and I was just totally like, oh no, it's just because I'm a good public speaker. I had experiences in theater, so like I seemed more prepared, and they were just like kind of reading off the notes, but that's why it seemed like I did more work.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want these kids.
Yeah,
like,
you don't want to.
I understand, like I didn't, you know, like they didn't deserve to be penalized, but I also felt bad in that situation because it's like I understood that they didn't want to be in that position where one person basically did most of the work. You know? Always feels awkward, but I mean, at the same time, as somebody who's done theater and who has collaborated with people on like creative projects, you know, I mean, I think like it's what's always been frustrating is I'm sure I could have group projects where I would like, if it's clearly determined ahead of time what the roles are, because like I think the big thing why I've often sometimes like just been in the role of not doing less of the work, even though I wanted to do like a fair share of the work, I didn't like being in that position, was just because I had like a problem with procrastination. And so it's like,
oh yeah,
I will do my share of the work. I'm just going to do it like last minute, which like a lot of people understandably are just like, no, I don't want that. That's too scary. So specialist or generalist?
So that has to do with if you're more somebody who likes to sort of do a little bit of everything, like you like to sort of be involved in all different things like a little bit, or if you're someone who like has a few things that you're really, really focused on. And this helps you figure out which one you are, because I feel like a lot of times, like I feel like I'm always hearing things about you should be this, like you should, is it better for you to be a specialist or is it better for you to be a generalist? And that this will help you figure out like what are you just naturally, like which one just naturally appeals more to you.
Yeah, no, that's great. Private or expressive?
Yeah, so that's just like if you're someone who likes to keep things more private or likes to like share more with your friends, and and it'll give you tips on like, how to like make sure you're with people you can trust if you're more expressive, and how to protect your privacy in cases where like people might be kind of pushing you to share things maybe you don't want to share.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think in terms of like social media, and even I like, I mean, I am like, I like to think that I'm strategic, even though I do like make a lot of public like posts on social media. I mean, this video is going to be publicly on YouTube, but I also recognize like, first of all, like there are people in my life that don't want that kind of exposure, so I need to be respectful of their privacy, and also I need to be respectful of my own safety. And it can be super hard, especially in this age of social media, and like, nothing, unfortunately, even if you just are very careful about your social media use, like nothing's private anymore. It's scary.
Yeah, you don't know who's gonna see it.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, like I saw like a TikTok today, like, or I think it was yesterday, I don't know when it was, but somebody like, like there's this trend of like filming people's like public meltdowns, which is so
I don't
off.
like that.
No, it's so mean, and it's like, I think like it's a little different when it's like a racist meltdown, but like, I do think like it's better to err on the side of like compassion. Like some people, when they're at their worst, that's not who they are as a person. Obviously, it's not okay if they're being disrespectful, but like there was like a recent case where somebody was just upset that like their flight was canceled, and they weren't like being mean to staff or anything, from what I saw anyways. They were just having a meltdown, and that's like, that's normal. Maybe it's not, I don't know if it's normal, but it's like,
you don't want that all over, like everybody seeing that.
No, I mean, I think like I'm somebody like who's generally good at masking when I'm in public, but I have those kind of meltdowns in private, and
so do I.
It's hard because like it doesn't feel good. At least I don't like having those like kind of like things where I feel like full of rage, like when I feel like I'm being treated unfairly. But it's just people making fun of people who are struggling. That just seems so mean. What makes you feel better?
Oh, so that one, it asks you like when something's wrong, do you That one just has two choices, and the choices are: do you like to do something that's more related to what's wrong, or do you prefer just something like being distracted? So some of the things are like, if like in terms of the music you listen to, like if you're sad, would you like to listen to sad music or like to listen to angry music if you're angry, or do you prefer music that's gonna like change your mood, like upbeat, inspired, like that type of thing, and different types of media, and just what kind of thing makes you feel better.
Yeah, the old opposite action, as they call it in DBT.
Yes, but this validates if that's not your thing. Yes, that's not my
yeah.
thing. I answered all A's on that quiz.
Yeah, it's always interesting because sometimes what I actually do is I sometimes have kind of like almost like a blend of both, which is like sometimes I'll listen to, like, there's these like funny remixes of like by this guy named Neil Cicierega, who does these like funny, like there's this song called The End, which like takes like a Linkin Park song and a Doobie Brothers song, and the Doobie Brothers instrumental is very like cheerful, and the Linkin Park song is like very like depressing and sad, and it's just really funny because, and that like always like when I'm kind of in that right kind of like angsty mood, it's like I'm not in the mood for like a genuinely happy song, but I'm in the mood for a kind of subversively happy song where it's kind of like not really a happy song, but it kind of is a happy song at the same time. I also do tend to like love like upbeat music in general, even if it's angry music or it's like kind of sad upbeat music. But you know, that's
I like upbeat too, but it depends on my mood. Like
I mean, I also do love like emotional, like I do like that music that makes me feel like, you know, like the sad, or like you know, depends what mood I'm in. How do you respond to conflict?
So that one has 4 choices for how you respond to conflict. So one of them is being a problem solver. One of them is if you're someone who's like kind of more laid back, where like the problem doesn't bother you that much to begin with. Another one is if you sort of look for silver lining. And then the fourth one is you need like emotional support, comfort, that sort of thing. And that was really important to validate all of those equally, because I feel like in our society now there's a lot of push to either be the chill person who doesn't care that there is a problem, or the one who is more like wants to do the positive thing. And I want to make sure that, like, because I'm definitely like a mixture of the problem solving and the emotional support, depending on like how solvable the problem is. And so it's like I want to make sure that was like all of those were equally validated on that quiz.
Yeah, I know, like when like I've been able to be kind of like there have been times where, because I kind of like, you know, while I was working in like the psych industry, I was like, you know, able to kind of compartmentalize emotionally and kind of like be the problem solver in certain situations, like for like other people. But I know in my own life, like when I'm having like dealing with like emotional conflict, I tend to like just get easily emotionally overstimulated, regardless of like what my role in the conflict is. And it's it's rough. I definitely, like, I think mostly I mean, it'll be interesting to see what it says, but I think I often like need that emotional support is like really the main thing. Like often I am relatively self-sufficient when it comes to like actually knowing what the solution to the problem is, and I sometimes just need to trust my gut on it. But like a lot of times from other people, really what I need is just emotional validation that the problem is real and it's not just in my head.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for too. And that can be a step in solving the problem, like getting validation that it's there.
Yeah, absolutely. Where is your energy?
So that one has to do with when we describe a person as being energetic, we often are picturing someone who's like really bubbly and upbeat, but that's just one type of energy. That's like expressing your energy externally. So on this quiz, you can either be someone who expresses your energy externally, like that sort of bubbly personality. You could be someone who has your energy more internally, like being very introspective, someone who really thinks deeply about things. Or you can have your energy be channeled, meaning that you're really focused on something you're doing, like a goal or a passion or a hobby, something you're sort of putting it into. So it's just about how your energy can be channeled.
Oh, great. And do you have holistic experiences?
Yeah. So the way I define holistic in this case, because that can mean different things, but in this
Yeah.
case, it's sort of things being connected together. So like, do you have music that reminds you of happy times, or music that you avoid because maybe it reminds you of not happy times, or foods that you associate with different things, and do you have things that are sort of linked together? Like if you had a positive experience in a place, do you now always feel positive when you go to that place? It can bring you joy. Or do you feel like, if I had a bad experience in that place, now it's like I feel bad when I go to that place because of that thing? And it's just about whether you have those types of experiences or not, and making sure that sort of bringing that to light, because I feel like sometimes people who don't have those experiences aren't aware of those of us who do. So
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, no, that's definitely, definitely a real phenomenon of like the like having like space at different places like remind you of different experiences. I definitely can relate to that. Like sometimes
yeah.
like there's been times where like a certain place, if I associate it with certain energies or whatever, like I just can't be in that space.
Yeah, me too.
um how symbolic are you?
So that one's a little bit similar. So that's about if you have sort of a symbolic attachment to different things. Like, for example, are you someone who likes to hold on to a lot of things that have like sentimental value to you? And or are you someone who has sort of symbolic representation with like places, music, foods, different things like that? And sometimes there are cultural things that are symbolic. Like for example, like when it's a new year, January 1st, do you feel like, oh, it's a new year, it's a new beginning, I feel more motivated to change my life? Or do you feel like, hey, like that's just an arbitrary number on a calendar, I can change my life any day of the year?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, definitely in terms of like the symbolic, in terms of like belongings, I definitely get really attached. I'm like,
oh, me too.
maybe a little
Yeah.
bit of a hoarder, but or
Yeah.
maybe some people would say I am, but I definitely get really attached to certain belongings.
Oh yeah, I am too. I have a lot of collections like
Especially
that.
the biggest thing I like don't throw out is like old, like I remember like it was like ridiculous when I was a kid, like keeping like old school work, including like math tests and stuff like that. And I'm like, of course I'm not gonna like care what I got on a math quiz when I was like 2 or no, not 2, like 6 or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's funny. But like I actually do genuinely like keep holding on to like old stories I wrote,
Oh,
or
me
like
too.
old like pictures. I always love it's so funny because like I think like some of my siblings are just like, I don't care about like this old art, I'm throw it in the trash. But I'm like, no, don't, like mine, don't.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I don't throw anything away.
So what art interests you?
So that one's just sort of a list of like different types of art, like studio art, writing, theater, things like that.
Yeah.
And it just asks you like which type you might be interested in. That quiz is structured a little differently, where it's just sort of true or false, so that way you can come out liking all the different types of art. You don't have to like choose one over the other.
Oh, I like that one because yeah, I mean, definitely for me, certain things like like if I was to choose between theater and music, it just feel like I can't choose one.
Oh yeah,
it's like they're both like so integral to who
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah. No, you won't have to choose. That quiz lets you
Oh, that's
come
great.
out.
I like that.
Yeah.
Which book genre fits you?
So that one just asks, like, it's kind of a just for fun quiz about what type of book you might like to read. It has like, mystery, adventure type of books, or like fantasy, sci-fi, or like more realistic fiction or memoirs, that type of thing.
Yeah, it's always interesting. I think like when I was a kid, I used to very much like prefer like fantasy books, but I think like increasingly I really do like realistic, like if I do like a fantasy book, I usually prefer it based on the degree to which it's really about the human relationships. Like that's always what I'm interested in, is like the emotional conflict, I also do really love sci-fi still, like just because I think there are some like really interesting ideas that it can explore, like about like society.
Yeah.
What sport interests you?
So that one's kind of similar to the art quiz, just about sports, and it's different categories like team sports or like individual racing sports, performing sports, and it's the same as the art one where you can come out to like as many as you want.
Oh, cool. I'm curious. I definitely I'm somebody who like I think like I I'm definitely not a sports person in terms of watching sports. But you know, I remember I had this like big reaction to sports as like a kid, or not as a kid, as a teen, because like when I was like a kid, I was like, oh, I'll go to the Red Sox game and have fun, and like, you know, I'll act like I really like, you know, I kind of have this expectation to like really care about it. Like, I remember when I was like in elementary school, everybody was like, because like, you know, I grew up in the Boston area, so like the Red Sox, you know, like they were finally like able to win the World Series, and everybody cared about it. So I had to kind of pretend to care about it, but I didn't really care. It wasn't something that ever really interested me, and it was always I think like there was a brief time, like I think even like up to like beginning college, where I kind of had this kind of like, sports are, but like I recognize that they are like a genuine source of joy and enjoyment in a lot of people's lives, and especially with you know, it's weird because like, you know, that's the debate of trans people in sports, and I think like something that's like, I don't think I would have hated sports so much if I actually had a place in sports, if I was able to be included in like even just like non-competitive or just like for fun recreational sports, if there was some sort of, because I mean, I never was that competitive. I did swim team for like 1 year, and well, I did it for throughout most of my time in middle school, and I did it in my first year of high school, and I was very good at it. Like I would actually like it was so funny. Like I would go in like the lane with all like the slowest swimmers, and like I would just be like lapping them to the point where like the coach was like, you can't keep on choosing that lane. You need to be people who are similar to you. I'm like, no, I just want to do like, I want to be like really lazy and
But that makes sense. Like everyone's not competitive. Like I'm the same way. Like I've gotten into like non-competitive now. Like I do ultimate frisbee, but
great.
I mean prior to this, I feel like most sports in school were like, you know, people would be mean if you're not good at it. So
yeah, I think like a lot of I mean, just there's a lot of people that feel I mean, it's not just trans people, but I've heard like just like femme folks like in general are often like have a sense of being ostracized in gym class, or like they don't fit in. I don't know if I ever really felt that way in gym. It was never like my favorite, you know, like PE was never my favorite subject. But like at the same time, I think fortunately I lived in a community that was a little, I mean, at least in my experience, maybe other people have different experiences, but like I didn't feel like super ostracized as like in like a grade school, like, or like elementary school, but like when it came to like competitive sports in high school, like, you know, swim team, just like there was because it's so gendered and it had a lot of that like masculine energy. It was funny though. The 1 year I swam. This is not even this is so off topic, but the 1 year I swam in high school. For some reason, as a joke, like the like captains of the team decided to have like us wear rainbow speedos. Which I loved. I was like,
that sounds like fun.
It was fun.
I like that.
I mean, like, rainbow was not our school's color, but I was like, that's great.
Awesome.
But then I fortunately stopped swim team at just the right time, because they like next year there were like no rainbows. I was like, oh, come on. I wanted the rainbow speedos. But I mean, I wasn't part of it then anyways. But there was still like some weird toxic masculinity even within that kind of space, which like swim team I think was not like the most macho dudes necessarily, but like there still was some weird tendencies, like, and definitely insecurities around certain like things, you know. That was weird. What kind of eater are you?
So that's about if you're like more selective, or if you're someone who kind of eats like whatever, like everything. And that was really important to me because when I was writing the book, I was asking around, like, okay, what's something that you've been pressured about? And I think my mom actually suggested that, 'cause she's like, everyone I know has a story about like being pushed to eat food that they didn't like. So
Yeah.
this actually validates being more selective, that like it's totally okay if you don't like everything, and it tells you that, like, just don't let people pressure you into eating food that you don't like.
Yeah, you know what was interesting is I always as a kid there were certain like particularly vegetables that I just didn't like, which I mean I actually do have I always have had quite a like wide palate. I mean like I love like if you ask me my favorite vegetables as a kid, I'd say broccoli, Brussels sprouts, like I liked asparagus. I probably my favorite was artichokes. I loved artichokes as a kid. But like bell peppers like have always, even to this day, like I don't prefer eating. I can enjoy it in the context of like a soup and stuff. I can enjoy the flavor, but it's something about like the texture or something. I don't know what it is, and it's specifically bell peppers. I like I can enjoy spicy peppers, but like bell peppers, there's something off. And I remember I think like my like my mom was actually like trying to I was trying to be supportive of me, like, oh, I think like when like she like told me like I think maybe it was about tomato, because tomatoes I didn't like for a long time, and I think that was mostly the taste. But I remember my mom said, oh, I think maybe it's a sensory thing with this thing, and like I think she was just trying to like kind of figure out like the different food preferences. But for some reason I had this like weird like perfectionistic thing of like, if it's a sensory thing, that means it's not a true like food preference. It should only be based on taste, which I don't know where I got that idea that like that it doesn't matter the texture of your food. Like texture is a big part of the
that's
experience.
a big thing. A lot of people, the reason they don't like something is because of texture. Like that's pretty normal.
Yeah, like I know to this day, like when it's like hard bread, like I don't like the texture, like having to bite something like hard that's like a bread, like like I like pizza where it's like the like dough is really kind of soft, like and easy to chew. So I know that's definitely in terms of like eating. I weirdly had this like internalized idea that sensory preferences are bad as a kid, and now I'm learning like, oh, it's okay to just say like, this isn't for me,
Yeah. Like I've always said that. I don't think I knew the term like sensory preferences when I was a kid.
Yeah, sometimes like kids, like there are preferences based on texture, which makes sense. I mean,
makes sense.
it's like food is not just about what it tastes like; it's also about like the experience of chewing on it.
Oh yeah, it's the experience. Yeah.
And I think I just often have tended to prefer soft foods and not really like. I mean, I think that's only increased because like I like broke my 2 front teeth when I was a kid. Like they're still like I think they just like the last it's still just like the same like tooth just glued together, so I can't really like bite into things. Like I have to like use like the side, so it's like certain things are kind of hard to chew.
That'd be hard.
So what career fits you?
So that sort of explores like what type of career fields you might be interested in, and it won't tell you anything like very specific, like you should be a doctor or something, but it has different categories, like a category of like if you like working with your hands, doing physical things, or like outdoor work, or if you like working with people, if you like sort of being in a creative field, or if you like a math and science type of fields.
Yeah, so I see that that one's categorized into like active, personal, creative, and technical. And then there's obviously also like, as with I think a lot of these kind of quizzes, the mixture of answers.
There's overlap, and you can combine the things. If you're like, oh, I like art and technical, maybe you'd like to be a graphic designer, and there's all different combinations like that.
Yeah, like I mean, like just looking at it right here, probably. Well, certainly creative. Like I'm definitely a very creative person, and I imagine also personal. I'd get quite a few of these, or like sometimes ones where maybe I'd want to like choose between them.
Yeah.
What motivates you?
Yeah, so that one talks about like what types of things motivate you in your goals. So I think there were 5 choices. The first one is just fun and enjoyment of what you're doing. So like if you're doing an activity like art or sports or something, you're doing it because you just like to do it. The second one is about personal achievement, like sort of beating your own best as opposed to beating somebody else, setting your own goals and achieving them. The third one is competition, that you like to win. You like playing to win and being in contests and trying to win. And then the fourth one, then the next one after that is do you, sort of showcasing your talent, like getting the praise, getting support from people, like getting to perform in front of others and getting the positive feedback. And then the last one is making an impact, like knowing that what you did is like having a positive impact on other people or on the world. And so it just sort of tells you like and this can apply to any field that you're in, just knowing what motivates you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it looks like there's a final note, but the final quiz that I see listed in the table of contents is what matters most to you.
Yep, so that's about your life priorities. And I mean, there are a million things that can matter to you. So I kind of categorized it into three very broad categories. So the first one is about people. That can be about your family and your friends and like always staying in touch with those people, or it could mean like making new friends or anything like that, but it's all about sort of the people and your relationships. The second one is about some sort of passion, and it can be something that you want to do as a career, or it can be something that is something that you just always want to be able to do even if you don't make it into a career. And then the third one is about adventure and variety, getting to have a lot of different experiences, whether that means like just trying a lot of things, or whether it means traveling, or whatever that means to you.
Oh, great. So that's this quiz book called All About You, a personality quiz book. Here, there we go. And so these two books we got Redefining Positive, and we got All About You, the personality quiz book. And would you like to share, we're going to obviously put in the description of this video where people can access these books, like where they can buy them online. But is there any other information in terms of that you just kind of where people can keep up with you or learn about new projects, or can access more information about your work?
Oh, yep. So you can look me up on my website, which is NicoleRaheja.com. And then I have a YouTube channel, Nicole Raheja, where you can see some of my other interviews. And then the books they're both available on Amazon and at Stillwater River Publications in Rhode Island.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And on the website for Stillwater Publications as well.
Oh, awesome. So, do you mind asking, do you have a preference? Would you prefer people buy it from Stillwater, or is it just kind of any way that's most convenient?
If you're able to support the local bookstore, then I definitely do that. But if you don't live in that area, then it's also on Amazon.
Okay, I'll definitely keep that in mind if I'm gonna gift it. I'm sure I'm gonna gift one of these books, if not both of them, to somebody in my life, because
yeah.
I'm sure I know people who would appreciate your work. I guess just final question, if you want to share with the audience. And again, I will also link your YouTube channel on not only in this video, but it'll also be in the little box, the other channels box on YouTube on my YouTube channel. Is there any projects you're working on now? Any books or anything that you'd like to share with the audience? It's okay if there's not.
So right now I have a couple of young adult novels in process, and then I also have a memoir in process. But I don't know when they'll be out. So.
Yeah, no worries. I know I always have so many different creative projects in the works that are big projects, and it's I have no idea which one will be.
Yeah.
I'll finish first, whether I'll even release it or whatever.
Yeah.
But anyways, I loved this conversation that we had, and
So did I. Thank you so much.
Oh, of course. And I hope that we can do this again. I'm sure
Yeah.
that we'll have some more conversations to be had on.
Oh yeah, I'd love to.
Oh,
yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So again, it's Nicole Raheja, Redefining Positive, How to Use Validation to Be a Positive Force in People's Lives, and All About You, a personality quiz book. And there'll be the links in the description, so check those out.